lighting over here.
Are we going to record locally, Christian?
I think
not?
Let's just do Zoom.
Okay.
Catherine Coley, is that correct?
That's correct, like guacamole. Catherine Coley.
Okay, perfect.
Nice. You've said that before.
I have.
All right, I'm going to introduce you, and then we'll just get started.
So thanks.
All right, everyone. I'm super excited to bring you Catherine Coley to the podcast. Catherine is the CEO of Binance USA and BAM Trading, and has done a ton of stuff in traditional finance as well as crypto finance leading up to this. We're super excited to have her on. Just before this, we're chatting about all kinds of goofy stuff, whether it's smart contracts for Patrick Coin or whatnot. So Catherine is definitely a Bitcoiner and a crypto person, and I'm super excited to learn more about Binance USA.
Yeah, really, really pumped to be on the show today, guys. Thanks. Happy Friday, or whatever day you're deciding to film this. I'm sorry.
No, it's all good. This might go out next Friday, actually, but sorry. Like I said, Catherine is the CEO of Binance USA, and we wanted to bring her on because I guess the exchange kind of lay of the land is changing a lot, especially in the United States. A lot of changes with Binance, which was Binance.com, which was a juggernaut. And now it seems like people can't access Binance.com, but at the same time, there's a ton of options in the US. I kind of wanted to learn a little bit about what's happening with all the exchanges from what you can see, and what do you think is important to be successful in the US market?
Yeah, it's been a fun journey, both personally and professionally, seeing the exchange environment evolve. And so we kind of saw when I was trying to figure out how to access crypto from the US dollar side of things. Actually, it started off trying to access crypto through the Hong Kong dollar side of things. And there really was no exchange environment for the Hong Kong dollar on-ramps initially. And so my way around the world back into San Francisco, learning about the US components, we saw the early days of folks really kind of bringing out and delivering a really simple product. And as we've seen them evolve, they're adding more components to this exchange model. And we've seen the success of that turn into something like an ecosystem that you see Binance Global really being able to deliver now. It's not just a simple matching engine order book for people to buy and sell crypto now. It's a wider variety of tools and assets that people can then really plug in and become more part of their daily lives.
Okay, so and correct me if I got this wrong. Technically, you are the CEO of BAM Trading, and BAM Trading is like licensing with Binance Global this technology to represent Binance in the US. Can you kind of tell me how exactly that works, as well as like why did you choose to work with Binance?
Yeah, so you can call it CEO of Binance US or BAM Trading Services. We do business as both. The purpose of having a new company here in the United States is one where we're able to really cater to the audience that we have. And the US regulation is so unique to crypto, and specifically still in a state of evolution, that we really wanted to have a core focus dedicated to building something out that would be both functional, but also evolving with the current state of the United States crypto ecosystem. So Binance had been kind of a great leader in the global race for getting both the technology as well as the community really gathered around this. And so I had a huge amount of respect for the way they've operated, been able to build and scale so quickly, as well as bring really kind of significantly more understanding of the markets technology to the surface. So what they were bringing was trading tools that traders actually liked using. And that to me was something that I wanted to honor and say, if we are going to be introducing crypto markets, let's not make it look too easy. Like, let's teach people about how markets actually are trading. Let's teach people about order books. Let's make sure that we're delivering a platform that is both educational as well as functional for the new to experienced user. And so the idea and opportunity to work with a team like that and gain information and understanding of how CZ has been able to scale a business so quickly is one that what a privilege it is to be here. And so that's really what I'm able to license the technology from Binance.com, and then bring the market awareness for the US user, as well as cater to the US regulations that we need to be thinking about for our US users as well, into Binance US.
So, Catherine, what actually is Binance US? Is it just a version of Binance.com that is accessible to US users, or is it something a little bit more behind the scenes, kind of like how Coinbase has Coinbase custody? So, like, what is the suite of services that Binance US has, and then how does that differ from traditional Binance?
Yeah, right now we're operating in 37 states and Puerto Rico, delivering a spot market access for 25 tokens, with the ability to have dollar on ramps in both our wires, ACH, and debit cards with FDIC insurance on your dollar deposits. So what I just said there is a little bit mix of what exists on .com and what it does not exist yet. And that's because a lot of it is catered to a US user wanting that FDIC insurance coverage, also wanting fiat on ramps, also wanting to be able to make sure that the tokens that we're listing are going through a digital asset risk assessment framework, and then it stops there. And Binance.com then continues and has futures and labs and margin and additional products on top of that. So given we're about 2 months old, this is how far we've come, and we're building out on top of that going forward. So you'll see in the near coming months an app being built out to allow for folks to be able to access trading on the go. And then as well, you'll be able to see us rolling out into more states. So we've got 13 that are not on, we're not able to operate in, and we'll be working our way through the license and registrations to get access into those markets.
So, of the tokens that are on Binance US, how did Binance US go and vet those and decide that those are compliant tokens to trade inside the US?
Yeah, there's the process of listing comes from a wide range of items, and we've seen different groups, exchanges particularly, go through how they're measuring getting coins listed in the United States. So we've done that on our own as well with a digital asset risk assessment framework, which we go through and document each coin, the process to which we're going through, putting it through a robust checklist to make sure that their risk parameters are inside the ones that we are operating inside of the United States, as well as factors like the health of that community, the robust nature of market makers and liquidity revolving around appetite for trading. There's a lot of concern where you could list coins that have actually no ecosystem here in the United States and would fall flat on a US-based exchange. So we really have to cater to the fact that our users are going to be US-centric, really building out healthy markets that would be comparable with the dollar base pair, as well as just exploring what's coming out here specific to the United States.
Is BNB token part of Binance US at all?
Yeah, it was in the top 7 that we listed out of the gates. So we had 7 coins that we listed against US dollar and USDT. And then within 24 hours, we rolled out BTC pairs across those top 7 as well. So call them, the large caps of crypto, your Bitcoin, your Ethereum, your XRP, your Bitcoin Cash, Litecoin, and BNB and USDT.
So does BNB have kind of the same role and function in Binance US as it does on Binance.com, like reduce trading fees and stuff like that?
Yeah. The utility aspect there for getting BNB to deliver 25% discount on your trading fees. And that allows for our first starting tier on our VIP tiers, which allow for the more volume you're trading for a better fee structure. So the starting level is 10 basis points, or 0.1% of the notional that you're trading would be your trading fee. And then if you have over 0 BNB, you would get 25% discount on that. And Black Friday special, you get on top of the 25%, if you hold more than 5 BNB, you get another 50% off. So total of 75% off your trading fees coming up on Black Friday.
So the big conversation with BNB token is that generally people consider it a security. And so what's the discussion? I mean, I guess I can't ask what the discussion is behind the scenes, but what's the discussion about BNB kind of being in a legal gray area and being offered to U.S. investors?
Yeah, I mean, we've listed 25 tokens, all of which have made it through and passed our digital asset risk assessment framework. So the way we've measured this is within the lens of the U.S. Regulation, where and how and what capacity we're comfortable with for listing these tokens. So it passed our risk assessment framework, as did 24 other coins. And right now, we've only really seen a couple that have been cleared necessarily through.
So I kind of wanted to ask you a similar question, but with a different angle. Can you describe BNB to me? Like, what do you think BNB is?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's so many aspects where a token that is delivering an ease of access within a platform for access for discounted trading fees, and then the ability for BNB to then be used in different scenarios, such as, Binance Charity Foundation has been able to leverage it for being able to, essentially bring a global awareness to something that we can then raise funds for. The pink token coin was one that had a one-to-one conversion with BNB, allowing for, dignity among young women that were able to access tools and supplies that they weren't previously. It also then goes to feed students, it's an absurd amount of meals that they get based on just one BNB as a donation mechanism. So within the ecosystem that Binance Global has built, and within the one we intend to build inside of Binance US, BNB does serve as a functional utility tool for that.
So I kind of want to ask you a little bit about like what the future of exchanges and what the future of your competition looks like. I understand that obviously
we all knew that. No.
I mean, obviously there's a lot of, existing, I guess like fiat crypto exchanges, Kraken, Coinbase, Gemini. But there's also like this kind of looming like legacy financial institutions also peeking into crypto. When you're like looking at this space and strategizing for Binance, like what are you more kind of concerned about and like strategizing, towards? And I guess, yeah, just like what's your thought on both of those factors?
Yeah, I guess I'd adjust your question in some sense of saying like, what am I most concerned about versus what am I most excited about? And that just might be my own mindset. But the element that we've seen so far with the last 7 years of US-based digital asset marketplaces has given us such a perspective to be able to begin kind of our quest inside of the United States. So we've been able to see where different functions have aided and also maybe delayed the success of certain marketplaces. So with that, we can kind of navigate where to spend most of our time in terms of what we need to be delivering. And right now, I still feel like we're catering extremely well to a niche audience of crypto savvy individuals. And that's been fantastic. And we're kind of getting it super sharp into exactly what they're looking for, allowing them to advance down the path of crypto trading. So you're seeing DeFi, you're seeing derivatives, you're seeing kind of an advancement. But the problem that I assess is that we are missing, the boats leaving the station without everyone on board. So we have a niche community that is, larger than it was last year and larger than the year before, but still relatively isolated. So kind of Binance US is really here to make sure that we can lower the barriers of entry, welcome, more inclusive communities into understanding crypto, and take it away from something that's, as isolating or intimidating as crypto intentionally was, for better, for worse, but bring it into just access and management and growing of your own capital. I see it as kind of the future of how we'll be monitoring our own funds going forward, not as a supplemental hobby on the side that it's going to be, an app that's sitting next to my bank account, but one that is going to be the future of how I'm going to be managing, the value that I intend to grow in my life.
So that intersects pretty well with the whole narrative in the DeFi world, where we all think these like decentralized financial applications are going to be these protocols that help us with our own personal financial well-being. How does Binance US and Binance at large kind of intersect with DeFi, and how do you guys kind of view that space?
Yeah, like you think about what a traditional marketplace would actually entail, and it would not even include earning yields on your deposits. That would be another application. So the idea that we are morphing that into the full product is something that I think it's unavoidable. You've got folks that are going to be able to be participants actively on an exchange, whether that's the high frequency traders, whether that's just the day traders, or whether that's people just with short-term horizons for their trading scales. But you've also got the folks that want to be in there for the long-term position, don't want to touch it, just want to have it sit on the side. So you welcome that side of like, well, you're going to need a custody solution then for the folks that are going to be kind of the sit and holds. And what's the sweetener for that? They can earn a yield on top of what their deposits are. So I see that as all the kind of puzzle pieces into making sure that the participants in the market are both, like new to experienced, and short-term high frequency traders to, institutional, we used to call it real money. But kind of like the longer holder trade positions. I mean, taking this world out of what we kind of consider in future speak and bringing it back to what traditional markets, FX markets, are built on. You've got your hedge funds, your event-driven funds. You've got your institutional real money, or that's kind of your pensions and your endowments. And those are behemoths, and they move, insanely slow. But when they're moving, it's, tectonic plates of value are being shifted. And so the breakdown of bringing that style into the future, we just need to make sure we're building different products for it. One thing we took into consideration is Binance has been kind of a core delivering value to a retail audience. So how we don't miss out on the institutional side of that as it develops in the US is we partnered with Tagomi to be able to provide liquidity to institutional players through a platform that looked and smelled and felt familiar to them, but included the liquidity from our platform. So you kind of, when we're thinking about things, we got to include everybody, or else it'll be really quite a lonely place.
So you were mentioning how the Binance app wouldn't just be this app that's next to your Wells Fargo app or whatever legacy financial app that's kind of a tool, but much more than that, kind of an ecosystem. And so the DeFi ecosystem has a bunch of verbs in them, like borrowing, lending, I don't know what the verb would be for maker, but like a collateralized loan, leveraging. Is this something that is included in Binance's suite of services available to retail, or at least in the vision?
Yeah. I'd say on the .com side, they've already included several of those verbs, as you mentioned, in their suite of products that they provide for folks. And because we're able at Binance US to license the technology that they've built, we can then pluck and pull what we think is appropriate for the US audience. And then we have to kind of bring in as well, swoop in, remembering that there's a different licensing mechanism, and futures in the international arena look a little bit more like CFTC and clearinghouses and FCMs in the US arena. So it's kind of recognize exactly what's taking place globally, see how it's already being built on Binance.com, and then apply it to the environment we can and operate inside the United States. So. It's a nice position to be in.
Kind of on that same track, being in the US and seeing what Binance.com is able to do outside of the US without having to kind of deal with the same kind of regulatory burden that you have to deal with. Do you think that the US is falling behind in the crypto space, or do you think that we still have an edge?
I mean, I wouldn't be here committed to the United States if I thought this was a long lost game. So I've spent the majority of my career being kind of this on the ground liaison to make sure that the US doesn't fall behind in terms of innovation or new frontiers, and being able to translate what's happening outside of the United States to the US user and make sure that they're making the path forward for themselves has kind of always been something I'm quite passionate about, but also have had quite a lot of experience in. And so being able to have this opportunity of making sure that the US is aware of what's happening globally and is able to bring the best of the world's technology into the United States to compete and adapt something that the US users really do need, that to me is like extremely optimistic. I think there's plenty of room. It just needed to be kind of dusted off and reconfigured. And we need to make sure that all of the US is understanding what we're working on so that we don't alienate groups that could find this insanely valuable. I take crypto as a huge equalizer, and the US still has room to allow for an agent like that to take place.
So how does Binance Chain fit into this conversation? How does US Binance and Binance Chain intersect, if at all?
Yeah, I mean, plenty of room for us to consider on interacting with Binance Chain or offering different projects potentially down the road that have been built on top of it. I mean, BNB for one of them is already listed. BUSD is the Binance stablecoin that's being rolled out into the United States as well. So I think there's a lot of upside for where BEP2 is kind of being developed on. But at the same time, focused right now on Binance US rather than Binance US DEX. But that's another project that could be considered, but not right now.
So I kind of want to get back to talking a little bit about dealing with like regulators. I'm assuming that you deal with regulators on every level to some degree. Like, what's the varying amount of understanding and openness to Bitcoin and that kind of stuff? And if there's one thing that they're generally most concerned about, what would that be from what you can see?
Yeah, we actually have an office in Washington, D.C., so that's where our legal and regulatory sit, and they're involved in, D.C. is quite a small place, so walking into the office, they walk into the office with several people that are involved in kind of these alliances and programs that are geared towards teaching regulators about cryptocurrencies as well. So I think there's huge headway that's been made since 2012 and beyond. The sharpness that you see regulators now asking questions, understanding business models, understanding scarcity models even, they've come a long way. And I think great things that we've seen, especially 2019, have made it a mainstream requirement for regulators to at least have a soundbite on their stance around digital assets. I think that's from a regulator standpoint, but also from a traditional finance standpoint. The number of people we've seen that now can have a educated opinion on it has grown. Credit to the Libra hearings, I would say, even bringing and addressing the congressmen and women that have been able to comment eloquently, as well as plenty of room to learn more that we saw and was broadcast globally. So I think that's those little steps are huge in terms of getting it to be a comfortable topic to discuss. It's intimidating for someone that's actively trying to pursue it. It's intimidating for someone who's actively trying to avoid it. So we have to make sure that regulators are aware of the developments and the purpose of these developments in order for them to see the benefit from both an innovation side as well as social progress.
So I'm kind of curious, is there any, since you're in Washington, D.C., my mind kind of went to lobbying and lobbying efforts. Is there any sort of like teamwork between like Binance US and Coinbase and Gemini, any sort of like alliance to help kind of guide US regulations in a pro-crypto fashion?
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess being the last kid on the kickball team here in the United States, it's always easy for me to want to collaborate with folks. They're like, well, you weren't here in the trenches, thanks. But I still stand from an opinion that a collaborative voice would definitely be one that we are still so early in this game. I'm I'm cheering for all of us in that aspect. And we've been able to get in touch with, the key leaders at the respective marketplaces. There have been several conferences related around the travel rule where they're bringing together all of the compliance minds of these exchanges to really kind of put more brains behind our decisions that we're making that will impact not only us, but future folks that want to come into the space as well. So very pro understanding where they're coming from, understanding what they've done, what hasn't worked, and coming up with a solution if our powers combined can help. Power to us. So no, it's been very cordial in terms of engaging with other groups.
So if Binance, Gemini, and Coinbase were all in the same room and they were about to walk into Congress and lobby for something, what would be the first thing that they would lobby for?
Oh man, that's a good question. We'll probably have to talk to them and figure out what we want to lobby for. I can't make that decision on my own. That wouldn't be teamwork, right?
From what you can see, what would you
here's
want?
What we're going to lobby on. I'm so glad I brought these two people in. This is called collaboration, and I'm making decisions here. No,
what's the issue that's plaguing the industry, at least in the United States?
Yeah, the biggest one that's caused the most of us to come together on efforts has been really around the travel rule and understanding where FATF is going to be affecting exchanges in that model from both an operations standpoint as well as a regulation.
Wait, what's the FATF rule?
Or just along with the travel rule for restrictions that would be placed on the movement of funds for exchanges. And I've seen the development of regulation come into other markets where you're assuming it's penalizing everybody across the board. And, the size of frustration are heard around the world. And yet the solutions that we can come up with do still allow for businesses to work through things. So given that we are late into the game, of our origin is years after the travel rule has kind of been put out in the universe, we're having to play catch up quite quickly with the progress that the other marketplaces have made around this. The good news is that the progress made on these is still in the workings. So we're not terribly far behind. You've seen Binance.com partner with CipherTrace on getting towards a solution, and we're keen to understand how others are going about it, but quick learners and clearly to act.
When I think of things like the travel rule, and I always think of like Bitcoiners saying like there are no coins, like the coins are everywhere, right? Because it's just a distributed ledger. Like, what is it like trying to explain like those kind of concepts? Like, there's actually no coins ever moving. Like, is that something that is just like a non-starter?
Yeah, it's we're also thinking about it from like that ephemeral side, but also like logistics. Like micro logistics that would be involved on our actual platform and reporting. So we start with probably the more logistics and tangible items, and then allow where we can the philosophical standpoints to come through. Speaking
on like the philosophical side, I'd love to get a little cosmic on this podcast.
Okay.
I mean, we've talked a little bit before this about, Bitcoin and religion and how that all fits together, but I'd kind of want to get your take on how Bitcoin and how potentially other chains are going to affect the future of finance and potentially humanity in your eyes. Yeah, well, it's interesting because we get a lot of, it's a worthwhile question of like, why did you list more than one coin on your platform? And I think it in the same way that, the different paths that get people to learn about digital assets and then to learn about finance are the more roads we have towards understanding, the better. And you might come into crypto understanding through Doge and then understand more about decentralization and line yourself back into Bitcoin or vice versa. So I think that's something that we're just providing this platform that gives people that freedom of choice to come to their own understanding of what they really want to be engaging with. So that's kind of our blanket
my viewpoint and why we have this diversity of selection on Binance US. The second side is like, where do we see this kind of evolving and from a financial market side? Shocking. There's room for a lot of players in this whole world. I think people are, always needing a kind reminder that we may have had, 2 items that we could only do, and now you have a ton. I think about when I was growing up, my professions that I could choose from were like fireman, lawyer, doctor, banker, wife. And I was like, well, those aren't limiting. Like,
cryptocurrency exchange wasn't on that list?
Yeah, right. Cryptocurrency exchange wasn't on the list. Like, protocol liquidity manager wasn't on the list. Like, even when I moved to San Francisco and I'd look at these job descriptions and it was like growth associate. And I was like, what does that mean? Like, how did you study for being a growth associate? This is something that we need to be teaching down at a fundamental level. I know people are trying to simplify it, but the more we simplify the world, the less people think there are options and the less they see themselves fitting into that world. So, I think so much of what crypto's allowed me to do is be able to create a world where I belong. And that allows me to have a global mindset and a freedom to be around, not in one place, an interaction with globally minded humans that want to be discussing all ranges of topics, whether it is religion, whether it is finance, whether it is trading. And that's exactly the world I want to live in. So that's one of the beauties that I found. And so I'm just trying to create more ways for people to find themselves able to be who they want to be.
So keeping it cosmic here, I've always considered like Ethereum and Bitcoin as kind of these cyber nations that you can opt into and subscribe to. And I see kind of Binance kind of building out like that own version of it, kind of in the same way that like Facebook isn't really domiciled anywhere. It's kind of just this internet thing that exists, and like you can be a citizen of Facebook or not. Do you feel like Binance fits into that model too?
Like, fortunately so. I mean, I think about the commonalities I've had discussing Binance on a London tube with someone I've never met before. And we immediately had like a great bond around the world going like, oh, you trade on Binance Jersey? Cool. I'm thinking of launching Binance US. How's that? And he's like, that's sweet. We guess we both get to support Binance. Cheers. And we take for granted when common bonds can be made around the world. It lets us kind of reach in and see into a different window of where things are operating. Understanding how different demographics and geographies are using cryptocurrency is another fascinating realm for me. I mean, I think oftentimes people broad stroke and say, Asia has a higher risk appetite and therefore they're trading more crypto. It's actually way more nuanced than that. It's like, well, Korea has been trading specifically based on like a speculative mindset, where Japan was really on a leveraged mindset. And, Hong Kong they were changing their whole jobs into crypto, leaving behind their old industry. And Singapore was building new careers and new companies out of it. So
wait, were those just examples, as examples, or are those actual real examples per the country?
Those are the real nuances of the market. That
Kimchi premium.
Yeah, kimchi premium, right.
And discount.
And then you've got like Latin America and South America using it for sake that they've got such high inflation in their own currency that they have to be using it for their own denomination. Same with Africa. Like we take for granted the thought of how people are using crypto, but the reason why it resonates with people is so nuanced. And that's what I find fascinating. And I found that fascinating from a foreign currencies perspective, that you just had so many different market dynamics of where people came from, where they were raised, what the governments were like, what their economic norms were, what their social norms were, how they interacted with money. I mean, the way we interacted with money 30 years ago is very different from now, having huge, very public arenas talking about concepts of money. Like, that's not necessarily, it was taboo back in the day. to even bring it up. That's why it was isolated to bankers and kept behind doors, behind vaults, behind counters. And you only could go there at certain times of the week. Whereas now we've got around the clock conversations on Twitter, on Telegram, Periscope, you name it, people wanting to express how they're feeling and interacting with this new medium. I find it fascinating. Cosmic checking out. No.
Yeah, I like to say that Bitcoin is a conversation about money. Like, we haven't had a conversation about what money is for a really long time. And Bitcoin kind of opened a crazy, crazy Pandora's box around, what is money, who can issue it, and all that stuff.
It's fascinating. When I came out to San Francisco about 3 years ago, I worked at Silicon Valley Bank after Morgan Stanley and before Ripple for a brief stint. And we held these Friday, we called them like Friday finance firesides. And it would be a group of like 6 to 10 of us in an apartment discussing all of our financial insecurities in a group with people from Facebook content, Stripe, EA Games, Silicon Valley Bank, Barclays. And we'd sit around and be like, okay, 401ks, let's break it down. Okay, taxes, let's break it down. Okay, IRAs, like, let's break it down. And we had to do this still in the privacy of our homes in order to discuss money management and our own financials. Whereas now, it's like you walk on the street and talk about Bitcoin and you're just doing the same thing, but the conversation is broken open. And there's still needing to be that freedom of getting people out of what feels like a taboo subject and something extremely personal and welcoming them into a conversation to own it. And that's what I think is the message we still need to really focus on. It's not a scary thing. It's not a thing to be ashamed of. This is your ticket to freedom. So, like, discuss it.
Christian, do you have any more questions you want to close out?
Well, I wanted to close out with like, what is your unpopular opinion about crypto in 2019?
Oh, well, I've only got 4 weeks left. No.
Well, I mean, if you were to look back, whatever's in front of you, what's your unpopular opinion?
Give me a second on this one. Unpopular opinion.
We edit plenty, so take as much time as you want.
Oh, really? That's great to know. We could redo the start, the beginning part. The unpopular opinion, I think, is that people's first foray into crypto will not be what they are known for later on. So I think there's going to be an evolution within people's identities in cryptocurrencies, and we have to be accepting of that. So as much as we're branding ourselves and trying to make a name for certain aspects, we need to remember that it's a really small world, and welcome all types of people to shed their cocoons and become different shapes and morph into different areas of cryptocurrency. So it's going to start happening. It's already happened. I'm on my second act in crypto. So be prepared to welcome others.
Yeah, with every bull run, the dust gets kicked back up again and it needs to land one more time. And so it's never really actually settling.
Yeah. Or it's like, who's changed their colors since they started and been able to evolve, and maybe they weren't as great at what they used to do and now they really resonate, or they've found that something frustrated them and now they're building it themselves. So I find that people that I meet that are on their second acts in crypto, we have this kind of common bond of saying, like, all right, we've made it. Now good luck in the next realm.
All right, Catherine, where can people find you on Twitter? What can they expect next out of Binance, and who do you want to hear from?
Awesome. So stay tuned by us. We're on Twitter at Binance America. I'm at Crypto Coley, and we have Telegram channels for both an announcements only one and then one run by our community, Binance US Angels. So we have those links on our Twitter as well. You can find us at Binance.us. We have a blog and LinkedIn at Binance.us. And then other than there, stay tuned. We've got some exciting things coming up for the Thanksgiving week. One to get us out of our shells, away from our computers, and engaging with the people around us. So get ready to be gregarious and double down on both efforts of Turkey and Bitcoin.
Oh man, I'm really curious about that one. I have no idea what that could possibly be.
And then, stay tuned, keep asking questions, engage with us on Twitter. My DMs are open. I do customer support. That's why we had to reschedule this podcast. Just a couple questions that needed to get answered. But the feedback that we get from our users is crucial for us making sure that our product is both relevant but also evolving. So very open to having a two-way dialogue with you.
Fantastic. Thanks again, Catherine, for coming onto the podcast. You all know where you can find it, at POV Crypto Pod. You can find me at CK_Snarks. Quick show for Bitcoin 2020 in San Francisco, Catherine. Going to be a great event. So, yeah, make sure to go out there. 25% off with the code POV for Bitcoin 2020. David?
You can find me at Trustless State, both on Twitter and on Medium, and probably at Bitcoin 2020.
Nice.
Awesome. Cheers, y'all.
Thanks, Catherine.
Signing off.